Satan been preparing for his final effort to deceive the world? The foundations of his work was laid by the assurance given to him even in Eden. Ye shall not surely die. And that was the lie that he first told to Eve. Satan is now using every device in his sealing time to keep the minds of God's people from the present truth and to cause them to waver. I saw a covering that God was drawing over his people to protect them in the time of trouble. And every soul that was decided on truth and was pure in heart was to be covered with the covering of the Almighty. Satan knew this, and he was at work in mighty power to keep the minds of as many people as he possibly could wavering and unsettling on the truth. Okay? Could it be that Satan is using things like music, television, different things of the world, worldly fashions, to sway the minds of God's people so that they will be distracted from keeping their eyes on God? Could us be? Could it be? Okay. Just keep that in mind. Jesus also knew their position. We're told that they dwelled in Pergamos. There are two words translated for dwell in the New Testament, and one means to take up the temporary dwelling, The other one is to settle down and stay, a permanent residence. Now, these people had settled down in Pergamos, and they were not running away from the trouble around them. So which one do you think they were when it says they dwelled there? This was actually their permanent residency. They weren't going anywhere. They were staying there. That's fine. They set a good example for churches existing in this day, in that far too often we allow the world to cause us to run and hide in fear. So in one sense, they were okay in saying, you know what, we're going to stay here, and we are going to be a light for the Lord. Okay? And he was commending them for that. They're going to be a light. So they're not running away. A lot of people always run and hide. And actually, we know that today, even with some of our Adventist brothers and sisters, we're coming from a church in Maryland that they spend a lot of time talking about country living. And they taught us about country living. The only thing is I don't want to be in that country because I'm from the West Indies and I'm used to warm weather and mangoes, and I don't want to be out there in frigid cold up in Canada somewhere. But they spend a lot of time in talking about country living, and I'm not saying there's a time when we probably should consider, to get out of the city. But we're here for a purpose, and God is going to use you where you are today. So while we are in the city, what are we doing? We should be a light. So while we're in the city, we shouldn't just be sitting around. I know Brother Inger is working so hard to build us up as evangelists, and so that we can be prepared, so that we can go out and give Bible studies, But that's what we're supposed to be doing. We should not be living in here comfortable and just working, day to day. We're just coming and going like nothing is happening. Or certainly, there's a lot happening. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, we wrestle with spirituality's parts, and we know and see what Satan is doing. So we should not be comfortable where we are to just remain as we are, but we should be ready, make ourselves ready, okay? So that we can go out and be that light, spread the gospel, warn people, do the work. Well, they were settled and they would just have a permanent residency, and it seems like, okay, fine. You want to be the light, I commend you for that. They were trying their best to drive the church away into oblivion. We must make our stand in this world and be willing to stand up and speak up against the evils and the wickedness that mark our societies, whatever the cost. The church in Pergamos was doing a couple things right, and Jesus commended them for that. And let's see what he found as he looked at the church further on. Okay, they held fast to his name. That was one thing that they were doing, right? They called upon his name, which reminds me, a lot of people call on his name. And they called upon his name. The church was not ashamed of the name of Jesus. His name is the most divisive name in history, yet his name is the only name whereby men must be saved, right? But it reminds me, though, that when you look across our Christian world and churches today, everybody's calling his name. They don't necessarily live in it, right? But they're calling his name, you know. But this church, they held fast to his name is one thing. There's some churches that you can go to, and you can sit through the entire service, but you never will hear the name of Jesus. Do you know that? Yes. As a matter of fact, I visited some churches that you go to, they don't even pray coming out and giving the message. They just, you know, run up and deliver whatever it is that they have to deliver. Secondly, they were commended because they have not denied the faith. For some reason, they did not deny the faith at all. This church was doctrinally pure, as we said before, and they held on to the fundamentals of the faith, and Jesus praised them for it. Well, you know that there's some of us who are, even in today, that are non-negotiable. We hold on to the non-negotiable truths in Christianity. We don't all have to live by the same opinions, but if we have a problem with that, then we have to read Romans 14. Ancient church held fast to the faith as we must. Okay? So they held fast to his name. They didn't deny the faith. They believed in it and they held on to the faith. So then what was the problem? What was the problem? They also, there were some people in church that he knew their sacrifices. I'm going to tell you about this one guy. Because before I said that corporately we're a church, but individually we're a church. This is a church, right? So you know that there's some people, as a body of the church, what must have been happening is they might have been doing some other things corporately, but individuals were standing fast to the faithful. Okay. Now, he also knew their sacrifices. We did mention that if you call upon the name of the Lord, if you give your life to the Lord, that you are going to face persecution. Well, there was this man by the name of Antipas, and Antipas was called a faithful martyr. History tells us that Antipas refused to offer a pinch of incense into the temple and called Caesar God. Right? He refused. Because of his refusal, you know what they did to Antipas? Those days, those people were awful. They were cruel back then. What they did was they put him in a bowl, a brass bowl. They built a bowl, and it's a brass bowl. And then they built a fire under that bowl. And they roasted him to death. Well, in spite of this, the Christians in Pergamos held fast their witness. They held fast their faith. Now you think about you know? And we see throughout history that every time they spilled the blood of a martyr, the church just grew, right? Do you know of any people today that are being martyred for the faith? Do you know of any people? We know of some. Monique has done some studies. She goes on Facebook, she goes all over the place, and she's reading. She actually got some free books about some martyrs there. Yeah, in Asia. People today are being martyred for their faith because they stand up for Jesus. And I have news for you. They don't call themselves Adventists, but they're standing up for the truth that they know. And for the truth that they know, and they're holding fast to it no matter what they're told to do, they're being martyred. Well, this guy in Pergamos, he was martyred because he refused to put that pinch of incense in the temple and call Caesar God. There is coming a time, my brothers and sisters, where we are going to be faced with some choices, some hard choices. And the thing that I feel really passionate about is, can we stand? Are we